Hello, I'm James Azimoha. Welcome to Africa News. Let's see your headlines. United Nations says nearly 700 civilians have been killed in drone strikes since January in Sudan. Residents in Mozambique face fuel scarcity amid global energy market uncertainty. And Pope Leo heads to Cameroon as he continues his Africa tour. Nearly 700 civilians have lost their lives in drone attacks across Sudan since January as the conflict enters its fourth year. The United Nations says most of the fatalities were recorded in early 2026, with frequent strikes reported in hard-hit regions, including Darfur and Kordofan. Aid agencies warn many of those affected are children, with drones striking residential areas, markets, and schools. Fighting between the National Army and the Rapid Support Forces have driven more than 11 million people away from their homes, with over 11,000 still unaccounted for. Angola has been experiencing severe flooding, damaging a key railway line, disrupting transport and affecting a major route for mineral exports.
Floodwaters have damaged sections of the Lobito railway corridor in Angola, forcing a suspension of operations after rivers burst their banks following heavy rains. Water rushed over rail lines, with tracks twisted and broken. The Lobito Atlantic Railway says flooding hit bridges over the Halo River between Cubal and Caimbambo, as well as a crossing over the Cavaco River near Benguela. By Monday, floodwaters were still flowing through communities, with homes inundated and belongings washed away. One resident described the scale of the destruction.
It's a tragedy. Other people were at the Cavaco wall, and by the time we realized it, the metal bridge had already collapsed. Then we got scared when the water started rising onto the deck and flooding our houses like rafts. As it reached our homes, many things were lost, rice, everything. There's no way to explain it.
The railway is a critical export route, carrying copper and cobalt from the Democratic Republic of Congo to the Atlantic port of Lobito and transporting goods in the opposite direction.
Fuel shortages are causing disruptions in Mozambique, with motorists reporting difficulty finding petrol and diesel as queues build up at stations.
Residents in Mozambique's capital, Maputo, say fuel shortages are making it increasingly difficult to find petrol and diesel, with long queues forming at stations across the city. Some drivers say they have moved between multiple neighbourhoods in search of fuel, only to find stations empty or offering limited supplies.
It's chaotic because I went to 4 or 5 fuel stations, but there was no fuel. Sometimes there is petrol, but no diesel. I went to the Jardim and Inhagoya neighborhoods, but there was no fuel there either, so I ended up coming here.
Others described a persistent imbalance between supply and demand, with petrol often unavailable despite some diesel stock.
Fuel availability is low and demand is high. There is a shortage of fuel these days. I have been looking for fuel since yesterday. In Matola, only a few fuel stations have supplies. Most of them have diesel but no petrol.
Authorities say they are monitoring the situation, linking the shortages to wider geopolitical tensions affecting global energy markets.
On the issue of fuel, we have all been closely following developments, including the regular information provided by the government on the fuel situation, which is a result of the conflict in the Middle East. One of the key factors to consider is the fuel crisis and its impact on the cost of living, which is already being felt.
Economists warn that disruptions to key shipping routes could push up prices further, increasing transport and insurance costs in the short term.
In the short term, we are likely to see fuel prices rise because the Strait of Hormuz through which about 12% of the world's fuel passes, has been disrupted by attacks. This will lead to higher transport costs, and insurance rates are also expected to increase.
The shortages come as supply pressures continue to build, leaving motorists facing uncertainty over fuel availability across the city.
Pope Leo has left Algeria, where he criticized violations of international law by what he called neo-colonial powers. Now he is heading to Cameroon, continuing a 10-day tour across 4 African countries. He's expected to call for peace in the country's English-speaking regions, where long-running conflict has killed thousands. The Pope will meet President Paul Biya in Yaoundé before traveling to Bamenda and Douala, where hundreds of thousands are expected to attend a major open-air mass. The trip spans nearly 18,000 kilometers and also includes visits to Angola and Equatorial Guinea. A small chapel in Kenya is capturing attention far beyond its size. As the Pope tours Africa, locals are hoping for a visit that could inspire faith and strengthen ties with the Vatican.
On the slopes of Kenya's Great Rift Valley, a small Catholic chapel is drawing fresh attention as Pope Leo XIV tours Africa. The Mai Mahiu Catholic Church, also called the Traveler's Chapel, measures just 15 by 8 feet and seats only 12 people. Locals hope the Pope may visit and believe that a papal prayer would bring comfort during difficult times in Kenya.
I'd like him to visit our Kenya, our country, because he may say a word or a prayer, because now in Kenya we have so many things going on. So when he comes in Africa, let him come in Kenya. And we even would like to see him.
The most they could expect from me is just prayers, because the last time Pope Francis was here in Kenya, he offered a mass, and lots of people went there. So I just hope if the current Pope visits Kenya, maybe he can do the same, maybe a mass for the Catholics who live in Kenya.
Today, the church offers visitors a quiet place for prayer, away from busy city life. The chapel was built in 1942 by Italian prisoners of war. In Nairobi, religious leaders are hopeful for stronger ties with the Vatican.
Kenya's port city of Lamu's historic charm has long defied its coastline, but today rapid development is testing the island's delicate balance between preservation and progress. Here's more.
Ahmad Bakali has spent decades navigating the waters around Lamu, a small but busy island off Kenya's east coast. From his boat, he has watched the town slowly transform. He remembers when building a home was simple. Neighbours used local coral stone, a material that stayed cool and worked with the ocean breeze. Today, the landscape is changing.
Right now, if you take a closer look at many of the houses in Lamu, the first thing you will notice is that someone has built a big house, different from our traditional houses. So many things have changed in Lamu.
Lamu Old Town, known for its coral stone buildings and timber architecture, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But new investment is reshaping its identity. Old and crumbling houses are being renovated into luxury villas. Structural engineer Jamil Abdul Fattah says while the traditional designs are valuable, modern construction is necessary for safety and growth.
There are new developers coming, people from outside Kenya, outside Lamu. They want to have modern Swahili houses, so it's like the traditional houses is becoming modern. The houses that we used to have are changing. We are not getting the authentic Swahili houses. It's like a mix of a modern house and a Swahili house. They should be scared, but at the same time, they should adapt.
Lamu now stands at a crossroads. As it grows, the challenge remains how to embrace the future without losing a cultural identity shaped over centuries.
Now, Sierra Leone has completed a 100-day drive to tackle waste, with young workers clearing Lomlo Beach in Freetown to raise awareness and promote responsibility. Organizers are urging stricter anti-littering enforcement. Take a look.
Sierra Leone has carried out a 100-day campaign aimed at tackling waste challenges in the West African nation. The initiative saw young workers clearing Lumley Beach in the capital, Freetown, in a bid to encourage citizens to take greater personal responsibility in addressing the problem. Organisers of the project, known as the Young Sustainability Initiative, are also calling on the government to enforce regulations to curb littering.
When waste is thrown on the streets, it eventually ends up in the sea during the rainy season. It blocks gutters and drainage systems and finally reaches the beach. So please, government, we need enforcement.
Funds raised through a GoFundMe campaign have enabled the initiative to provide resources for volunteers and install bins made from recycled tyres at key points along the beach. The collected waste is sorted and transported for processing as part of broader efforts to reduce flooding in the city.
When we collect it, we will then come and weigh it here, where we're standing, and then after weighing, we will transfer it to our facility. In our facility, we will then shred the plastic and then mix it with sand and stone to then produce building blocks to be used for construction.
According to the World Bank, Sierra Leone generates around 130,000 tonnes of plastic waste each year, but only about 5% is properly recycled by domestic companies. With changing consumption patterns and limited infrastructure, experts warn that the city faces a long-term challenge in managing waste as its population continues to grow.
More than 25 million insecticide-treated nets will be distributed across Uganda as the country steps up its fight against malaria. This comes as officials express concern over rising cases amongst children under the age of 5.
Uganda is intensifying efforts to combat malaria with what it describes as its largest mosquito net distribution campaign to date. The initiative will see more than 25 million insecticide-treated nets rolled out in phases, focusing on regions with the highest infection rates. Officials say the use of nets can reduce malaria transmission by up to 50%.
Among the most effective prevention measures is the use of long-lasting insecticide-treated mosquito nets. We all know that when mosquito nets are used properly, these nets can break the malaria transmission by 50%. They can also reduce on morbidity and mortality by 25%.
Health teams have already begun distributing the nets, particularly in northern and eastern areas, where in some communities malaria transmission among children under 5 has reached as high as 13%. At the same time, global funding for malaria programs has declined, putting years of progress at risk. Uganda had reduced malaria prevalence among children under 5 from 45% in 2009 to nearly 10% in 2018, but the rise to 13% is now raising concerns. Officials are also calling for faster treatment, as data points to significant gaps in early detection and timely care.
We would like to pay more attention to encouraging Ugandans to ensure that they seek treatment after they have been tested from the recognized health facilities. We would also like to pay more attention to addressing issues of malaria in pregnancy among women.
Uganda remains among the top 10 countries with the highest malaria burden, with more than half of malaria deaths in 2025 occurring among children under 5. Authorities hope the campaign will protect vulnerable communities and help get the country back on track to eliminate malaria by 2030.
A new trade deal between South Africa and China could reshape the citrus market. The agreement is expected to cut export costs and keep fruit on shelves year-round. Here's more.
South Africa's citrus industry is set for a major boost after a new trade agreement with China. The updated protocol eases key treatment rules for citrus exports. It follows close technical work between officials from both countries. The changes are expected to lower costs and improve access to the Chinese market. China is already a strong market for South African citrus, especially navel oranges, lemons and grapefruit.
South Africa fruit industry is very mature. In some area, it's world-class advanced. You know how to prevent sanitary, biosafety, and you know how to keep fresh of your fruit So we have more confidence to South Africa management of this international trade.
Officials say the timing is important, as South Africa supplies fruit during China's off-season. This helps keep citrus available to consumers all year.
This is also important because from the 1st of May, we are going to have zero tariff access to the Chinese market. And that is going to be a game changer for agriculture, particularly in South Africa, where there's a huge demand for South African agricultural products, given our counter-cyclical and counter-seasonal benefit, and because the Chinese market is a massive market. And so deepening and widening trade to China is a fundamental part of our strategy going into the future.
Authorities in Pretoria and Beijing say the deal will strengthen agricultural ties, and it confirms China as a key trading partner for South Africa's fruit industry.
All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.